Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you're watching us live or recorded. Welcome to the ninth BRICS conference at the University of São Paulo. My name is Lucas Macedo. I'm a law student at the State University of Maringá, UEM, and a researcher at the Strength for BRICS Studies, the BRICS, at the University of São Paulo. It's true honor to be made in today's roundtable, the first time. Today we discuss a fundamental topic that profoundly shapes the 21st century technological revolutions in the BRICS Plus for industry to artificial intelligence. It's an honor to moderate the roundtable on a subject that truly defines the course of our time. Our goal is to reflect on how technological innovations have been reshaping reproductive structures and driving new dynamics of integration among BRICS plus countries. Joining us for this panel, I'm pleased to welcome Dr. Sashi Shekhar Vempat, Dr. Octavio Oliveira, Dr. Victor Menezes, and Dr. Thomas Law. It's a privilege to have such distinguished speakers with us today. Before we begin, I would like to thank our sponsor, Ibrachina, and also our supporters like China and Martins Lac Advogados. Their valuable contributions made this event possible. Alongside me and we resign to your table, I would also like to thank Jessica Vieira, a law student at the University of São Paulo, USP, and researcher at the BRICS. Without Jessica's help, this session would not have been possible. Thank you very much, Jessica. For those watching us on YouTube, you will find the attendance form in the comment section later. If you wish to receive an official certificate from this conference, please make sure to fill it out. Also, the comment section is open for the audience. Feel free to send our questions to our guests or share our trophies during the section. At the end of the presentations, we will have approximately 20 minutes for the Q&A section, so we encourage everyone to participate. On behalf of the BRICS and Professor Paulo Casella, I would like to thank you all for joining us today. I hope you join this debate and decide our speaker will share. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce our fixed speaker, Dr. Sashi Shekhar Vempat. A little. Dr. Sashi Shekhar Vempat, as co-founder of the Deep Tech for Bharat Foundation, Shashi champions India's AI ecosystem through the AI for India initiative. He holds several pivotal roles, including the chairperson of the Committee for Science and Technology Communication at the Department of Science Technology, GST, Government of India, and chairperson of the UGC Experts Committee of Educational Media. He contributes governance expertise to various boards, including the Indian Institute of Mass Communications, IIMC, James AJK Mass Communication, and Media Research Center. He also serves on the Global Advisory Board of ATSC, as CEO of Brother Bharat Shashi drove sweeping reforms at India's public broadcaster, starring modernization of Doordarshan and the All India Radio, with concurrently leading Rajya Sabha TV and its Bombay alums, such as also the author of Collective Spirit in Concrete Action, Man It Ba, and its influence on India. Dr. Sashi Vempat, you're a little.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you like, let's go.
Thank you. Thank you for that introduction. Good morning to all of you in Brazil, good evening here in India, and good afternoon wherever else you may be joining in the world. Uh, Thanks to the Sao Paulo University. This is my first event in this format with the BRICS format, and it's very interesting and exciting to be here today with all of you to talk about technology and how technology is evolving and what challenges it is posing in this decade, especially to the global south in terms of sovereignty, supply chain resilience, and in general, the developmental goals. Uh, what we've seen in the last few years, especially after the COVID-19 pandemic, is that technology is playing a very crucial and pivotal role within society, and we cannot afford to have risks in terms of technological dependency on any one supply chain, any one source of technology, or any one platform. And crises can emerge from anywhere. And so hence it becomes very important as a developing nation, as a democracy for India to build resilience in technology so that we are able to cope with these challenges. Today, what we are seeing with the global race to build technology, especially with technologies like artificial intelligence, is that not only is it a race to build first, it is also a race to assert supremacy. We have big platforms which have invested hundreds of billions of dollars, which are trying to create first mover advantage and capture markets globally, and that poses many challenges and many risks. What we've seen in India, because India is a very unique country in that sense, that it has not only the one of the largest populations in the world, more than 1 billion people, but it also has a very large technology savvy population, very large talent pool. And one of the reasons for this is how India has adopted new technologies. If you see historically, India's adoption of new technologies has been in leapfrogs. It has not been a linear path. For example, in India, we did not adopt landline telephones and broadband in a big way. We just jumped to mobile phones, mobile data, and today that is reflected in the one of the largest mobile user base in the world, with probably close to 1 billion plus mobile users. Also, interestingly, one of the lowest cost in terms of mobile data with availability of 4G, 5G, and so on. What this has resulted in is a very unique phenomenon in India, because you have a population which is very technology savvy, which is consuming digital media in a big way. And very interestingly, the digital media behavior is more video than text. So you have, on an average in India, close to 30 gigabytes of video being consumed every month by mobile users, which is one of the highest in the world. So what you can see is India has very unique characteristics. And what this has meant is that when you build technology in India, it has to be at a population scale. It has to address the needs of more than 1 billion people. And more importantly, it has to address the diversity of India, because in India, you have not only socio-economic diversity, you also have cultural diversity and nearly 100 languages and dialects. So you have a very diverse linguistic population as well. All of these create very unique challenges. And what we have seen since 2014, when Prime Minister Narendra Modi took office, is that India has started building out what are called digital public goods, DPG platforms. And these are public platforms with open APIs and which have been able to create a network effect for a variety of applications. To give you an example, we have a universal identity platform called Aadhaar, which is used for biometric authentication. We have a payments system called UPI, Universal Payments Interface, which allows digital cashless payments across platforms, across apps, now even across borders in multiple countries. So what these digital public good platforms have done is they have taken technology to the lowest strata of society. They have empowered the citizens across regions, across social levels, and they have allowed access to technology and the benefits of technology in a very universal and equitable manner. So when you look at a new technology like artificial intelligence, how do you achieve the same? I think that is where the biggest challenge right now is for India. One of the early issues with artificial intelligence was that a lot of the adoption was on the global big tech platforms. Now India is catching up. India is investing in a platform called BharatGen, which is a public platform which will address India's linguistic diversity, a large language model for the entire population as well as for the world. Another technology that India is building out is direct to mobile, D2M, which is based on a standard called ATSC3, which I believe even in Brazil is being adopted. So these technologies have the potential to take AI to the common man on their mobile phones, make it accessible, and deliver the fruits of the emerging technologies to the entire population. And this would be in line with what Prime Minister Modi has been talking about, which is his vision of a developed India by 2047, where technology works for the greater global good, not just in India, but for the entire global South. So with these initial thoughts, I'd like to hand it back to the moderator to take the conversation forward.
Thank you, Dr. Sashi. You are the best. Yeah. And the next, Otávio Oliveira. 1 second. Octavio Oliveira is PhD candidate in International Relations at PUC-Rio, Master from the Graduate Program in International Relations at the State University of Rio de Janeiro, PPG UERJ 2023, Associate Researcher at BRICS Study Group de BRICS Ativas. Asian Studies Laboratory, based at UERJ, the Laboratory for Studies on Culture, Media, and International Relations, LAMCRI, UERJ, and the research group of the Political Economic of South-South Relations, CNPq, FRJ. His current research focus on Chinese investments in ICTs in Africa and their effects on local economic development. Octavio.
Hello, everybody. Good morning, good evening, or good night, depending on where you are watching us from. It is a pleasure to be here today. My name is Otávio Oliveira. I'm a PhD candidate in International Relations and a researcher at the BRICS Studies Group of the University of São Paulo. And I'd like to thank the group for the opportunity of being here today, as well as our partners, more specifically Ibeshina, Lucas for the moderation, our technical team, and guests. It is an honor to be here with you today. The title for this presentation is BRICS Plus AI and Digital Infrastructures, but I'll focus more on the structures themselves. Just let me know if the slides are working, if when I'm pass Is it okay? Let me see. Did it pass? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the summary for the presentation, in which I would want to take a few steps back when talking about AI and tech revolutions, and to put the focus on the structures that enable BRICS plus countries to develop their own technological capabilities in the first place. So first, I'm going to look into the state of art of digital infrastructures in BRICS countries. Secondly, what initiatives have been achieved so far with the group? And lastly, what are the points for improvement and critique in regard to the development digital infrastructures? So international groups, organizations, and institutions increasingly stress the importance of AI, big data, and other technologies for the development in our common future. But the development of such technologies is extremely costly, technically complex, and environmentally sensitive. In smaller countries such as Singapore, Ireland, Denmark, data centers' energy consumption can represent anything from 7 to 18% of the country's national electricity consumption. Beyond the consumption issue, there's also the unequal development of data centers across the world. The African continent, for example, accounts for less than 1% of all available data centers capacity in the world. And from all of the data centers in Africa, 2/3 of them are currently here in Africa. So taking this into context, we must understand the prospects of BRICS plus digital economy efforts, which can be defined, the idea, the definition of digital economy. You can utilize the definition by the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development that says that digital economy is the economic activity that results from billions of everyday online connections among people, businesses, devices, data, and processes. In the literature, there are a few ways to frame the different aspects that compose this discussion regarding digital economy. But here I want to give an example of Professor Luca Belli from the Center for Technology and Society, and also the CyberBRICS group, both from Fundação Getúlio Vargas, which made its presence in last year's GEBRICS roundtable, also on internet governance, which is available on Ivashina's YouTube channel, which I highly recommend as well. So he came up with the concept of the key AI sovereignty enablers, categorized in 8 aspects of this theme. But I think it is a pretty useful lexicon that can be stretched to other aspects of the entire digital economy itself. And out of those 8 categories, I'll try to focus on 3 of them that regards physical infrastructures. So these infrastructures we are talking about here range anything from 5G networks and data centers to that power up the entire networks themselves. But we can divide them into different layers of technology so that we can understand its specificities. The elements on the first level are critical for the entire chain. For instance, energy, water, and critical mineral supply are a must for any discussion on AI capacities, but also the terrestrial and subsea cables, as well as the data centers, bear importance on this issue, since the broader usage of AI requires a robust infrastructure to supply its usage. So to understand at what level each BRICS country sits in terms of their digital economic development, we must understand the phases through which every economy goes through when digitalizing their economies, from the most underdeveloped to the most developed infrastructures. So these categories I'm presenting to you guys here were elaborated by the International Data Center Authority, IDCA, which publishes an annual report on digital economy. These different phases are interesting to understand that having a proper environment for AI comprises different aspects of the levels of digital infrastructures that we have talked about before. In their annual report, they integrate hundreds of factors into 4 categories for the research, generating what they call as the digital economy ranking, which include the areas of economy, environment, social, and governance. Basically, among these things that they include, we can consider technological infrastructure, sustainability, physical infrastructure, and also stability and corruption. And according to the ranking, when we frame BRICS plus countries in the report, we can see that not even China is considered into the more developed phases 2 and 3. Of course, we can make a critique on their methodology in regards to how they measure, for example, corruption, but still it is very telling that not a single country went through the later stages of tech development for AI. And this is a reflection also on how few we spend as BRICS countries in research and development, considering that innovation also affects the overall capacity, complexity, and quality of the ICT sector in each country. From all BRICS Plus countries, only China has a R&D expenditure above world average. BRICS countries' average R&D expenditure measured on its percentage of GDP stands below the average of middle-income countries, for example. Here, we're going to look further into some more data, and we have different indicators to measure digital economy, but I'm trying to utilize 3 of them here who kind of like harmonize a bunch of aspects that are important for this discussion. So the first one, the Global Innovation Index, it regards the level of innovation of a country. The second one has to do with the development of e-government services. And the last one, which I do believe it is the most important for this discussion, it is the BRICS countries' ability to adopt an artificial intelligence, considering the factors such as digital infrastructure, human capital, and public policies. In all metrics, most of our partners are in the bottom of the rankings, most notably Ethiopia, Iran, Egypt, South Africa, and Indonesia, which with only a few positive highlights such as UAE and China. In terms of the readiness, right, for BRICS countries to adopt and implement AI, only China, India, and UAE are among the top 50 countries most suitable for AI usage. So with this picture painted, what have we collectively achieved thus far as a group, as the BRICS itself? And here I want to focus on 3 aspects. The first of it is the BRICS Partnership for New Industrial Revolution, New Development Bank, or the BRICS Bank's role on digital infrastructures. And lastly, some thoughts on this year's Rio Summit. So today, perhaps the biggest initiative ushered by BRICS countries in the sector of ICTs and digital infrastructures is called the BRICS Partner, a cooperation mechanism created at the 10th BRICS Summit in 2018. It comprises 6 different cooperation projects in areas that range from technology transfer to industrial capacity building to cutting-edge technologies and skills development. Thus far, and this is according to the official information provided by the mechanism's website, in the 6 years of its launch, only 4 individual projects have been developed, 2 in the area of investment and trade, and 2 other in intelligent manufacturing. All in all, according to the BRICS Partner official information, more than 60 individual projects, summing around $5.4 billion have been agreed since the pandemic, even though we do not have further information into how much of each of these projects have been actually developed. In this year's Rio Summit, there were 3 new working groups and a new industrial development center created in China, announced in the context of BRICS Partner as well. You can read it in this year's Rio Declaration. And more importantly, members have agreed on the first common statement on global governance of AI. I had the honor to take part on the BRICS People's Council Working Group 6 on digital economy, digital sovereignty, artificial intelligence, and governance, led by Professor Fabiano, which will speak here as well on Friday on our Civil Society Roundtable. And in this working group, one of our preoccupations was precisely about the differences in digital infrastructure development in each country. Although if we get to read the declaration, we can see that it did not have much of a focus on digital infrastructures, but still it did have the recognition of the necessity, for instance, of the utilization of multilateral development banks to foster the necessary infrastructure for AI. And as shown before, the NDB officially has a focus on digital infrastructures, since it is one of its 6 areas for development. This is a screenshot from one of its websites or one of its annual reports. However, when we get to investigate the projects that the NDB has ushered for the sector, we only have 2020's Cellular Network and Cloud Services expansion project for the Russian Federation, worth of $300 million. This was the only project without a single order for a sector that is said to be the priority of the bank, which has an annual project approval of nearly $4.4 billion. It represents actually a mere 1% of all of the value for the bank's project approvals, lagging behind areas such as social infrastructure, which received $810 million, and also environmental protection, which received $680 million. Heading into our conclusions, we cannot stress enough the importance of the NDB as a multilateral development bank to foster the capacities of BRICS countries in the field of digital infrastructures and ICTs, a sector which remains very underfunded, especially considering not only the new BRICS members themselves, but also our new partners. We cannot discuss AI governance when most of our partners don't have the proper infrastructure to possibilitate such AI efforts. I would like to quote here the climate envoy and advisor to the president of Tanzania, Dr. Muyunji, which he said in the context of this year's COP30, and I quote, "We cannot talk about a just transition where 680 million African people, which are nearly half of the African population, lack energy access. What they are transitioning to," he asks. And even though this was in the context, of course, of energy and green transition, we can also extend it to the digitalization efforts as well. In the idea that we must understand the varying levels of development of the different countries involved in the BRICS grouping and have a proper discussion that does consider all of the realities and of the idiosyncrasies of each and every member. Lastly, I would just like to recommend a few publications for our audience, which really helped me, were very, very useful to make this research. The first of them is a recent discussion paper on AI in BRICS countries, written by Sérgio Queiroz and Denise Direito from IPEA. Two publications from the Cyber BRICS group that I've mentioned before, led by Professor Luca Belli from Fundação Getúlio Vargas. Also, the Global Digital Economy report by the IDCA, in which most of the data that I've showed here was based from. And lastly, last year's UNCTAD's Digital Economy report. Here's my contact and also my QR code for all my social media and publications. And I would like to thank once again everybody for your attention and for the group for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Otávio Oliveira. I will present our next speaker, Dr. Thomas Law.
Thank you. Good morning, Lucas.
Morning.
To say hi to all the speakers of this panel, to Professor Otávio, Professor Sashi, Professor Victor. It's a great honor to be here at BRICS conference with the University of São Paulo. And of course, I want to introduce myself. I'm a lawyer, also a professor invited by ProLan. ProLan is a program inside University of São Paulo that is for the master's and PhD students that wants to do this research on Latin America studies. And we are doing a special course for these students at the University of São Paulo. That is the first course that we launched this year to study Latin America and China. So I just want to introduce this important course that we are still having it until next month, until November. And this year I went 3 times to China, one to talk and speak and to hear about the artificial intelligence and what are the new trends for artificial intelligence. So we had this meeting at Shanghai Tower with many lawyers, many professors from many different institutions. But one of them that we have this more specific approach is the ECUPL, East China University of Political and Law Science. They just were here last week. They were here at Rio de Janeiro at the BRICS Legal Conference that was organized by the president of the Bar Association, Dr. Beto Simonetti, also with along other lawyers. One of them is Dr. Bruno Barata, he's the secretary of the BRICS Legal Forum in Brazil. So it was a great event with many point of views of scholars, lawyers from all the BRICS countries. And one of the panel that we watched, it's a friend of ours, it's Professor Xu Yan. She was talking about AI in China and all about the regulations that are in China. And I want to highlight also one of her interesting points. But also in this presentation, I want to highlight an article that we wrote at Fenaló. It's Como a IA generativa está moldando os serviços jurídicos. So I wrote an article about how China is dealing with this, with AI. And the name of the article is comments about AI on the Chinese legal markets and also the regulations of the Chinese and guidelines in the international commercial arbitration. So to start speaking about this kind of artificial intelligence, of course, if we analyze China as Professor Shasi said about India, China had some important plans. One of them, it's the Made in China 2025. It was the Chinese government launched it in 2015, and it was a strategy, industrial strategy to transform China from an economy based on low-cost manufacturing to a high-quality technological powerhouse. So this plan, it was to modernize China, and they did try to modernize China also with the industry. So nowadays we see big companies such as BYD, GWM, Zeekr, many car companies that are part of this Chinese strategy. So the vehicles, the electric vehicles, is part of this plan. And I want to highlight also another important plan that China made. It's in 2017. It is the next generation artificial intelligence development plan. And what is this plan? This plan is to modernize China also in the AI, in the artificial intelligence plan, so that in 2030, China could be the leader of AI in the whole world. This is the plan that they pursue in 2017. So about this, regarding the legislation in China, and we are now facing some big challenges, Professor Otávio, Victor, Sashi, it's the copyright and the patent regarding the AI nowadays. So there are some questions regarding this topic. Who owns the copyright to AI generated content or artwork? Can AI generated content or artwork be patented? How can we balance the interests of both the developers of LLMs, like, for example, ChatGPT, and their users? How can we ensure the fair, ethical, and lawful use of LLMs like ChatGPT or, for example, DeepSeek, that it's famous in China? So these are the following questions that many lawyers, many scholars are thinking about this regarding the AI that is a phenomenon. We see, for example, nowadays many photos, images, all created, and who has this patent? Are the inventors natural humans, or are the inventors, the AI developers, have also this authorization to have this patent? So I want to highlight one case It's China's first case on copyright AI. The name of the case is Li versus Liu in 2023. And the case involved the lawsuit between Mr. Li and Ms. Liu. Is a significant development in the intersection of AI and protection law. So the Chinese court, they ruled, I'm gonna get the case here, affirmed that AI generated images are copyrightable and that the creator of the image is entitled to rights of authorship under the Chinese copyright case. And this case is notable for its implications on the legal status of AI-generated images and the rights of creators in the digital age. So, in my opinion, and if you analyze this case, there's this decision of the Chinese first court from the Beijing first level court. It's not the high court or the Supreme Court, but it's the first court that decided this case. In my opinion, it's to encourage also the creation of AI images. Second, the AI developers' input is on the AI model rather than the generated pictures. And the AI developers' interests are protected by the license royalties. And in this case, for example, they had a specific authorization in the license. For example, except as set forth here in licensor claims no rights in the output you generate using the model. You are accountable for the output you generated and its subsequent uses. So I just want to give this first reflection about the theme. I think this is not only in China, but in the whole world. We have the AI Act in the European Union that is very famous, is more centralized for the human being. It is a regulation that deals with many risks about AI and also the rights and obligations. And for example, now in the US, we have Trump's new America's AI Act plan. It's quite a bit different from the European Act because it's not a law. It is a direction in which US wants to be also a great power in relation to China. They're fighting for this kind of technology. Nowadays, you have in one side USA and in the other side China. And of course, if you analyze this America Plans Act, there are three parts. One of it is the Accelerating AI Act plan. The Americans, they want to put the acceleration process in all the American economy. Second is it's about the infrastructure AI. To you have, like Professor Sashi and Otavio talked about, to have AI accelerating or data AI centers throughout the US, you need to have a powerhouse. You need to have infrastructure. So one of the big deals in USA is the amount of legislation that sometimes it's an obstacle for who wants to invest in AI. And the third pillar of this America's AI Act plan is about deals with the diplomacy and deals with the safety on cybersecurity. So as US and also China doesn't have a law regarding the AI, but they want to have this law. They are trying to learn more about AI, and they want the Congress of the people of China, they will have this law in about 4 or 5 years. But still then, Professor Sashi, China has this a lot of regulations. I wouldn't say that it's more as a soft law. There are really a lot of guidelines. Some of them that I want to highlight is that are from 2025, Lucas, is the implementation opinions on AI plus transportation regulation on government data sharing. So we have, for example, in this case, 8 guidelines that is very important for all Chinese companies and for the Chinese economy. The second one, opinions of the State Council on further implementing the artificial intelligence plus action. Number 3, opinions of the National Development and Reform Commission and the National Energy Administration on the implementing of advancing high quality development of artificial intelligence plus energy. So as you see, they have many opinions from the National Congress, they have many opinions from the State Council, and they are implementing many opinions about government data sharing. The fourth one, notice by the General Office of the China National Intellectual Property Administration of launching the development of AI plus application scenarios for public intellectual property information services. Number 5, cybersecurity technology labeling method for content generated by AI. Number 6, guidelines to promote AI education in primary and secondary schools. I think we had this week at Veja São Paulo an interview that they asked me about what is my opinion about the robots that China is using for the schools and for the primary and secondary schools. Nowadays, they have like robots, they have robots playing chess, you have bichos de pelúcia, né, talking in Mandarin, so teddy bears talking Mandarin. And in this case, Professor Shashi, they are asking if this is good for kids or if it's bad for kids. How is the technology affecting in a positive or negative way? And in this case, I told them that China sees AI as a progress, as a science. Therefore, they want to focus and try to incentive this kind of technology also in the primary schools, so that the kids and this new generation of students will be capable of dealing better with the new technologies and will be able to have a better form of competition regarding other countries. So number 7, guidelines to regulate the use in AI primary and secondary schools. So they're also thinking about the ethics that is very important, the norms that will take the regulation of AI also in consideration to big issues such as ethics. Number 8, measures for the security management of the application of facial recognition technology. So this is an important issue also in China, the facial recognition technology. We know that sometimes we saw here in Brazil that in this case, the facial recognition technology also has some problems And this is a big deal, not only in Brazil, China, but also in the whole world. Of course, there are many other legislation and guidelines in 2024, 2023, 2021. And I want to just to highlight one that I think that is very important for this debate here today at the University of São Paulo. That is that was launched in 2023. They have 4 guidelines in 2023. First, interim measures for the administration of generative artificial intelligence services. Second, provisions on the administration of the deep synthesis of internet-based information services. 3, practice guide for cybersecurity standards, content labeling methods for generative artificial intelligence service. And 4, the one that I want to highlight, is the service guidelines for the transportation safety of autonomous vehicles. So nowadays, Professor Victor, Chassi, Otávio, we had one case in US that a police stopped the car because of the high speed of the car. But there was no driver in the car. So there's a question, who is the responsible for the civil or penal acts regarding the driver? And in China, we have these guidelines for the transportation safety of autonomous vehicles. So I want to just to highlight these guidelines, and I know that in the judicial market, in the lawyers market nowadays in China, they are using a lot of AI, especially in the international scenarios such as mediation, arbitration. And due to this, the CIARB, the Chartered International Arbitrators, they also launched a guideline in 2025, this year. That is how the lawyers or the arbitrators, international arbitrators, should use the AI in the cases. And CIARB determined that the lawyers and the arbitrators could use AI, but they also have to make the disclosure inside the agreements, inside this arbitration agreement since the beginning of the chosen center of arbitration. And I also want to highlight that Brazil has also ethical norms inside the judicial and lawyers market, such as the CNJ, Conselho Nacional de Justiça, the Justice National Court, Council, has also the number, I think it's 615. It's a guideline also for lawyers to think and use properly the AI, but also based in ethical norms. So I just want to highlight these cases here. And of course, it's a great pleasure to be at University of São Paulo. I have my article written in Portuguese, but I also translated in English, Professor Sashi. So I'll send the article to Lucas, and I want to share all my thoughts. And I also want to debate in the near future, because the theme of AI changes a lot. I think that we are having a big transformation, not only in our society, but in our economy, in many aspects of the way we are living our lives. And I think we all, lawyers and people from different sectors, should acknowledge and understand better and deal with AI in a proper manner. So thank you, Lucas. Thank you, all the speakers of this panel.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas Long. It was great, very well. So I would like to present our closing speaker for this roundtable, Dr. Victor Menezes, PhD and Master of Laws with focus on Artificial Intelligence from the Federal University of Santa Catarina, UFSC, Bachelor of Laws from the Federal University of Pelotas, UFPEL, researcher in law and technology and practicing attorney. Dr. Victor Menezes, please.
Thank you, Lucas. I would like to say thank you for the BRICS for the invitation. Also to extend the greeting for my colleagues, so Dr. Thomas, Dr. Sashi, Dr. Otavio. And yeah, so let's get straight into it. So good morning, good evening, good night to everyone who is with us now in the audience. And the theme I would like to talk about today is the perspectives for Gen AI, so generative artificial intelligence and BRICS Plus. I've been working with artificial intelligence in law for about 8 or 9 years now, and for the last 2 years, I have been working exclusively on Gen AI, which is a very recent theme that caught the attention of everyone in the last couple of years since the release of ChatGPT in November of 22. So to put some points here, I would like to get this parallel on where we are now and what's happening in this area. So we have noticed this rise on Gen AI, as I said, since November 22. And for most people, it started with texts, but now we see like images and audios and videos generated by those AI tools, and it's rapidly evolving. And nowadays, you don't know if some images, some video or texts are generated by humans or by AI, and people are using it for like all kinds of stuff, like in work, like in academia, even for memes or something like that. It's everywhere in society. But honestly, what does this mean for BRICS Plus, right? I could think of two teams, and it's interesting enough that those two teams are the same that my colleagues here were thinking, which are like regulation and infrastructure, of course. So I asked myself, I asked the question on what does this means, and for regulation, it means on how can we keep up with the pace of innovation. So those technologies are rapidly evolving, and how can we make up policies? How can we think about new laws? How can we think about collective efforts to keep up with what's happening and to build strategies and laws that can last long enough for the next iterations of those technologies, to be generic enough, but at the same time specific enough to think about it. It's a challenge that all those countries are facing. And at the same time, as Octavio said, there's the question of infrastructure, right? So are we ready for it? Are those countries ready for this infrastructure? And are we accounting for the costs of those infrastructures, right? And when I mean costs, I mean like the economic costs, of course, but also the environmental costs and the social costs, which are involved in this kind of deal, right? So moving on, I would like to present one of the reports that Octavio presented this report. I think it's a very good one about artificial intelligence in BRICS countries. So sovereignty, development stages, and different perspectives. This report presents, from Queiroz and Direito, it presents a timeline of the launch of AI strategy by selected countries on BRICS Plus, and it shows that this is not something new, right? Since 2017, China was the first one to build this strategy on a national level. I know most of those countries are discussing or have drafts, or even some of them have laws about data privacy and AI, but it's still something that is being developed, right? It's something that it's on their long run. So I think this is interesting enough because we see that China started this, and India and the United Arab Emirates followed it. Sorry, but the other countries are following it, and put in their strategies and thinking about those laws and thinking about this, because it's something that you cannot ignore nowadays, right? And interestingly enough, there are some common grounds for those strategies, and I think those are the most relevant points, I would say, to think about BRICS Plus, right? To think on a common ground for them. And I would like to present a part of this to you. So I was checking on some guidances and values that are common on those national datas and AI strategies for BRICS Plus. And I noticed that the words ethics and growth are really present on them. Of course, we see like societal issues, sovereignty, and the research and development. But the part of growth and ethics are things are really related to what I was talking in the beginning, which are the regulations, the infrastructure. So I think this is the common ground that BRICS Plus can think about and develop on, because in their own national strategy, this is already there, right? So the countries are really thinking about their growth and their actualization and their investment in AI. And they want to be like China, they want to be part of a leadership in AI in the world, but also they are preoccupied on ethics and doing this like the right way and in a lawful way, and to put a common ground for this, right? So I think those are some of the common values that I think are interesting enough for BRICS Plus to think about and to invest on. And so this year in July, we saw that the BRICS leaders, so Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, they put on together a statement, a document for the global governance of artificial intelligence. It's a very interesting document, but I would like to highlight some parts of it, because in my opinion, and from what I could gather of their national strategies, this can be a common ground on where we can make some changes and direct our efforts collaborative. So the first point is the collaborative governance of AI. So I think most countries realize that they cannot do this alone. They must think about like cross-border data transfers. They must think about the transfer of technology. They must think about collaboration with other countries and sharing like data centers and new approaches and researches on AI. So the collaborative aspect of it, I think it's natural for the part of IT, but is highlighted by those countries, right? So I think they highlighted this as an important part of the governance of AI, and I think it's really important, good to see that they are heading toward this direction. But at the same time that we see some collaborative efforts and like group efforts, we also have to see like the part of sovereignty, right? So the individual part of those countries and their digital sovereignty. We have talked about in the past about like physical sovereignty, but nowadays the digital sovereignty is also very important, because it's important for their countries to develop, right? And they also have the right to develop their own digital assets and digital sovereignty and their own independencies as individual countries. And I found it interesting enough that in this document, in this statement, this collective and individual part is there, right? And I think it's essential to head toward this direction. And at the same time that we want to develop things and we're talking about data sets and infrastructure, it's a must to think about the environmental, right? So the environmental sustainability is a must, because otherwise some other interests other than the environment and the social sustainability are going to be more present and to dominate this discussion. So I think also it's interesting enough that those countries are putting this on this statement, and I think it's a direction that we must think about moving forward this subject. And at the same time, we must try to
ensure fair competition and do a market regulation. Of course, in this sense, the individual regulations are a must to ensure this, and yeah, to do this in a way that respect the environmental. I know it's very hard and difficult to do this, but it's interesting that those countries are aiming in this direction. But when we also think about on how we do this and thinking about the actual data and thinking about some good practice, I find interesting that those countries are thinking about international standards that are inclusive, representative, and accessible. And for example, in Dr. Shashi's speech, he talked about the linguistics in India. So it's a must to those countries to take this into account and to take the regional and social and linguistics and overall cultural characteristics to think about AI, right? And to think this in a way that can achieve or must aim in the mitigation of algorithmic bias and discrimination, because otherwise we were building AI systems that are not very good aligned with those countries' values and their populations. So it's a very difficult conversation, but overall, I think taking into account what those countries said in their individual strategies and what they are saying in their global statement from BRICS leaders, I think those are some of the points that I would like to highlight here for this discussion, and I found them very interesting and very, very important. But of course, we see those are where those countries want to achieve or where they want to be. This is some kind of direction that for now, and I hope we can discuss, those countries can discuss this further later. This is a direction that they're seeing right now. But how can we can achieve that, right? So what's the way? What are some of the axes for this development? And from the same report that I talked yesterday from Queiroz and Direito, they highlight some axes for AI development. So on how to get there, what's important, how they do a whole study on how those countries are right now. But I also think those axes are important to think on where we can go, right? On what's the way to go. And they highlight 4 axes. So the first one is the computational infrastructure. So those countries need chips for the AI models. Nowadays, there's a big race for video cards to develop those machine learning models and etc. But also the lithography. So people are researching new ways to make them more efficient, more cheaper, and overall more potent. So there's a big race for this all over the world. And to build those kind of technology, the countries in BRICS Plus, they need the physical infrastructure, they need those chips, they need to search for data centers and how to invest on them. So there's this whole part, this hardware part that's really important for them, and they have to think about strategies to build them. And on the software part of things, we have the data. So we have to think about that those models, they use data, and this data must be of high quality. So it must be refined, it must be treated, it must be built in such a way that respect those values, respect the law and the objects that they want to aim. And this is very difficult to build on. This is a great challenge in the area of machine learning and specifically Gen AI on how we can develop on how we can search this data for training, right? It's a big challenge. And of course, we must have to work on this data, to work on this infrastructure. We need people, we need workforce, and there are some skills, some hard skills and soft skills that are a must for people who must work in this area. And I would like to highlight the machine learning, data engineering, cybersecurity, and AI ethics as skills that those countries must develop on their workforce to go on and to develop new models and to achieve their goals of being AI first or AI developed nations. So it's a big challenge to develop this in their workforce. And once you have this, like the infrastructure, the data in the workforce, you can, of course, invest in research and development. And we know that for this kind of approach, usually it's public and private funding together to have this to achieve those objectives. And yeah, it's a part, it's a must of this type of technology, because we have to constantly research and develop new things and try new things, and sometimes it's trial and error, and there is not a playbook ready for that. You have to try new approaches, and every day there are new stuff going on. So it's always a constant of research and development, and sometimes the research is not going to give immediate results, and some other time it is. So it's a game that those countries must play and understand that it's part of the game, right? It's part of the play to invest in research and development, and yeah, usually by public and private fundings. And yeah, so as we talked about some of the strategies from those countries, some of the access where they can invest, but also I would like to think about the challenges that we are facing ahead, right? And of course that we are facing right now, but we are going to face in the immediate future. The first challenge that I think about is the fragmentation of AI regulations among the BRICS Plus members. So if we collectively think about common grounds and maybe common reports, common guidelines, even maybe in the future common regulations like the GDPR or something like that, I think it's important to discuss in this way, in the law field especially, but of course also in the geopolitics fields, because when you have a common grounds for this, you can share experiences, you can facilitate the data transfer between countries, and in the data privacy area, this cross-border transfer is one of the most difficult and important things between countries, because they want to ensure that the other country have the same level or an equiparable level of protection or requirements for the regulations. So these fragmentations of AI regulations is a challenge for BRICS Plus, and at the same time that it's a challenge between the countries, it's a challenge for the countries themselves, right? Because as Dr. Thomas said, like China is thinking about the regulations on AI for the next 5 or 6 years, which is a very good strategy. Because when things are going to change so fast in the upcoming years, you have to give yourself time to think about the best strategy, to think about the best principles. You cannot rush this kind of thing, but at the same time, you have to make a strategy for now. So it's a difficult challenge that those countries are facing, that they have to rush this regulation, but at the same time they cannot like pass anything just to for the law to exist right now, right? Because it's not going to make sense for the actual technology or for the upcoming one. So as I said before, the law must be generic enough, but also advanced enough to take into account what's happening in AI now and what's happening in like 1 year, 5 years, and in the future. Another problem, and I know that Octavio highlighted this enough when he said about where some countries are talking about, and I'm even going to quote him here, for a just transition when some other country lack energy access. That's a really big challenge, because some of the countries from BRICS Plus already have their own internal problems and difficulties, and at the same time, they want to overcome a part of those problems using AI, and they have to get to this infrastructure, right? And it's costly, that there's a limited access to it. It's hard to get, they lack the people, they lack the money, they lack, sometimes they have sometimes even this environmental problem for it. So I think it's a big challenge for those countries. And of course, even when you have the people, and of course the universities are playing a big part of this, when people are being trained in university and then go for the government, for startups or for big companies in the IT area, you have the problem of talent retention. So it's common in those countries for people to go to university, pursue their masters, PhDs in the IT area, and then they go to other countries and they don't come back. So the talent retention is a big issue, is a big problem for them. And at the same time, you have to retain those talents, you have to develop them. So you need people with high level of skills to develop other people, to invest in the IT area. And it's a big challenge. And finally, and I think this is again have to do with Dr. Sashi's speech, the part of alignment, right? So when we think about AI systems, we have to think about the social and cultural values of those of those countries and the people who are using it, and of course the people who are developing it. So as Dr. Shashi said, India has a big is very rich in languages. There are many languages in India. So if you're building an AI system for India, of course you have to take this into account. So their languages, their social and cultural values. And this is a big challenge for BRICS, right? Because otherwise you just take some foreign system that have their own social and cultural values in a foreign language that of course does not correspond to what this country wants. So this part of alignment is very hard for those countries, and it's a must for them to build ahead and to think about the next steps in their iterations of AI, and also to build this collective effort with between BRICS Plus to maybe align between their social and cultural values. And to finalize my speech, I have one more perspective. So when thinking about the futures and the next steps and what's going to happen, working with AI for about 8 or 9 years, I have seen a lot of people like saying that the future is going to be this way or that way. And to be honest, I think nobody knows exactly what's going to happen in the AI in the future, but we can get a grasp of it, right? And think about different perspectives to build our own perspective. So today I see that there's a lot of talk about agentic AI, which are those systems from AI that can autonomously solve multi-step problems. Some of those systems are actually not that autonomously and are more like workflows or something like that. So there's a lot of hype in the AI area, and sometimes not corresponding to the truth. It's a problem in the area, let's say that, put it that way, because sometimes you don't know what's really what those systems are really capable of, and what's really going to happen. But one thing is for sure, there are going to be next generations of Gen AI tools. They're going to evolve, but we don't know yet on when this is going to achieve a plateau and when this is going to halt, right? They are going to develop, and today it looks like, at least in my opinion, that agentic AI is the big word, the big advancement in the area, or the big goal that people must want to achieve. Some of the other people are even saying that after the agentic AI, we are going to achieve to the AI colleagues, which are even more autonomous, let's put it that way. But in reality, it's hard to understand now what we can do now, and we are not sure yet what we're going to achieve in the next years, right? But this is not an excuse for regulation not to take this into account. So when we are talking about policies and regulations, we have to think about as if this technology is already there, right? We have to prevent what's going to happen, to be ready for what's going to happen. So I think those are this is the main point for today in Gen AI. And I would like to present to you some conflicting visions on the near future of Gen AI. So really different visions. And I always like to take into account different visions to make my own. And the first one is the text AI 27, which is a vision that the technology is really going to advance in the next 2 years, and it's going to be like a really big boom in AI. And yeah, that's really going to change things. And there is another text that I really like, and I'm more skeptical to be honest. I think I'm more headed this way, which is the case against generative AI, which says that we might reach a plateau for generative AI. We might be close to a limit on it, or the advancements are not going to be really, really fast as they were for the next 3 or 4 years. And then we are going to put expectations in line, right? Because there's a lot of hype in this area. So I think it's always good to put those visions into play and to read different things and make your own vision. So I would recommend those texts. And yeah, to finalize it, I think for the distant future, we have this pursuit that some people have, some companies, some ideas for a artificial general intelligence, which is, put into simple words, it would be an intelligence that would have like a human level of intelligence and could solve really complex problems without being trained. We don't know if we will actually achieve this. It's hypothetical for most people. Most people will say that it's hypothetical, but there are some people pursuing this and say that we might achieve this in the future. And even if we don't achieve it, or when we're going to achieve it, I think it's good for regulators and for those countries to think about it, right? To take this into account as if it were going to be achievable. And this statement from the BRICS leaders, they take this into account, right? So I think it's good to know that those countries are thinking about that, even if we do not achieve this type of intelligence in the near future or ever in the future. And so, heading to my conclusion, as I said in the beginning, I think the main topics I think are important for BRIC Plus are the regulation and the ethics of artificial intelligence. So I think to think about the ethics, to build values, to discuss values, and to do their own internal regulations is a must. And of course, it takes time. It's not from one day to the other. It's something that must be discussed, but it's something that we must head towards too, right? And the second part is about the infrastructure, because in the AI development, I think today we can safely say that the infrastructure is part of this foundation, right? And it is necessary to build on those models, to build national or sovereign models or collaborative models as a group of countries. So in my opinion, I hopefully we are heading towards a collaborative future for BRICS Plus in the area of AI. And maybe we can see new advances and new regulations and new efforts together in the futures between those countries. And yeah, here are some references that I used to make this presentation. And yeah, if you want to talk with me, this is my LinkedIn. And of course, I will be staying for the discussion with my colleagues. And I would like to thank you again for the opportunity. And that's it.
Great, Dr. Victor Menezes. Thank you for your contribution to our roundtable and to all of our speakers for their insightful presentations. Now, we will have a quick Q&A session now, okay? Each of our guest speakers will have about 5 minutes or so to answer the questions, okay? Feel free to answer enough questions. You'll have however you want to, okay? The first, it's Jessica Vieira. The question: previous technological revolutions, such as the industrial and the digital ones, have had distinct impacts across BRICS Plus countries. How can the group learn from this historical process to avoid repeating patterns of technological dependence? Who started? Who started?
Lucas, could you repeat the question?
Yes, I can. Previous technological revolutions, such as the industrial and the digital ones, have had distinct impacts across BRICS Plus countries. How can the group learn from these historical processes to avoid repeating patterns of technological dependence? It's a
Uh,
hard question.
I think I can start if that's okay. And perhaps I did put the questions here on our Zoom chat so that we can look afterwards if we need to rethink about the questions, okay? But this was from Jessica, right? Okay, so I think we do have to take into consideration an aspect that concerns all areas related to BRICS, actually, which regards institutionalization, right? It is a discussion that whenever we talk about BRICS, it comes up. I think Professor Paulo Batista stresses this point the most here in Brazil, right? But since the BRICS does not operate as the UN, as an international organization, that is to say, it works as a group, but not as officially an institution with juridic personality. The capacity of coercion of group does remain limited, right? So we cannot expect any measurements in the sense of geopolitical matters to this extent. Speaking of the UN itself, if we take the Rio Declaration and the global governance on AI specifically, it says that, and I quote, we must operate under national regulatory frameworks and the UN Charter. And moreover, also, it says that a collective global effort is needed to establish an AI governance that upholds our shared values, addresses risks, builds trust, and ensures broad and inclusive international collaboration and access, including capacity building for developing countries with the United Nations at its core. And I repeat, with the United Nations at its core. So in this context, the group must keep pushing this consensus within the UN frameworks, such as the International Telecommunication Union, the ITU, and also the Internet Governance Forum, the IGF. And that's a pretty big problem we're going to face, especially with the expansion of the group. It's going to be an increasingly more difficult for us to achieve consensus in a bunch of areas, and also in the area of AI and industrial revolution. But our collective capacity to regulate or safeguard these impacts of AI, even the geopolitical ones, they fortunately or unfortunately, they must go through the United Nations.
Thank you,
If I
Octavio.
can add on this, I think one of the most important aspects where there can be collaboration is on best practices and learning, because that can go into capacity building, because each of the countries is going to figure this out for themselves on how to cope with the dominance of few big tech platforms, and how do you build capacity within your regulatory agencies to be able to keep up with the advancement of technology. For example, in India, which is a democracy, deep fakes have become a huge risk because deep fakes are being misused in different ways. And with AI and the advancements in AI, it's becoming that much harder to control this problem. So there is need for regulatory capacity, and to be able to boost regulatory capacity, you need tools, you need frameworks, and I think the learnings across the various countries should be, exchanged. There should be maybe a platform for such best practices to be shared, because that is what will help, safeguard sovereignty, guard against misuse of platforms, and also ensure that technology is not deployed in a very uneven manner. Other countries can catch up with all this knowledge sharing.
I share the same experience and the words of Professor Sashi. I think if you want to do AI, you need to have the infrastructure. So if BRICS wants to talk about the infrastructure, of course, we could have this better partnership that could be established between the countries. And of course, energy is the key issue for AI.
Thank you. The next question. Sorry, one second. Anybody call me? The next question. Next question. Generative AI is being developed developed and deployed unveiled across the BRICS Plus. What strategies could promote soft technological collaboration in this field? Repeat. Generative AI is being developed and deployed unveiled across the BRICS Plus. What strategies could promote soft technological collaboration in this field?
Maybe I can start then to think about some topics on this. I think, as Dr. Shashi said in the beginning, and then I cannot stress this enough because I think this is really a image on how it's important to think about the social and cultural values for AI is the part of linguistics, right? So I think to share those experiences, and usually I think it's the universities with research and sharing knowledge. I think this is one of the ways to do this. So to share those experiences and take those cultural and linguistic and social values into account between those countries is one of the ways to do this. And the other part is the part of that we talked about already of the infrastructure, right? So to share those experiences and to share technology between those countries, I think it would be a way to do this collaboration between South-South. So it would be a beginning of this, but also thinking about maybe this common regulation or common ground for principles of AI and this type of technology.
I think also to answer this question and have more forums debating this kind of issues between the artificial intelligence. Of course, we are discussing here now in this BRICS conference. BRICS, as Otávio said, and it's not a UN. BRICS is only the group of countries, and it's more like a multilateral forum, a premier forum to discuss great issues. But I think we could think also to have more and more universities discussing, more technological institutions discussing these matters. AI data centers, there are a lot of data centers AI in China nowadays that could also be one of the great responsibles for big discussions at BRICS. So I think it's talking, sharing ideas. I think it would be a good way to discuss the best way to promote the South-South collaboration.
Let me just add one other aspect on collaboration, which has to do with data, because a lot of the big tech AI models which have been built on the public internet have deep biases, and that's where the cultural issue and the language issue comes in from a diverse country standpoint. So there is a need for indigenous data sets. For example, many of Indian languages do not have a digital footprint. So how do you build an AI model for such languages? So one of the efforts that we are pushing in India is to create publicly accessible data sets, be it in terms of languages, be it in terms of different vertical domains. So to create these large public AI data sets which don't have biases, which truly reflect the diversity, becomes very important. That could be another area for collaboration in terms of open, publicly available data sets which are bias-free and which can potentially help in AI model development, which the Global South's priorities in mind.
Thank you. And the next question of Lucas Henriquez. How can BRICS safeguard and avoid the misuse of artificial intelligence on geopolitical matters, taking into consideration that we're witnessing on a race, mostly involving USA companies. Who started?
I think it's what Otávio said in the first question and in his answer. I think BRICS can be a block to talk together and have a big economic bloc inside UN or other organizations that are specific to talk about AI. I'll give you an example. Underneath the UN, you have UNCITRAL. UNCITRAL, for example, discusses the private law area. We have many conventions. You have the UN conventions on contracts, international contracts. And if you have these big discussions inside the UNCITRAL group, of course, one of the topics that they are discussing nowadays are the smart contracts, and it's related to AI. So if this kind of groups, and we have BRICS inside the UNCITRAL model law or UNCITRAL AI regulation or international regulation, I don't know, Lucas, that could be a case in which there will be a block also to discuss the form in which AI is being used in the international and have an international standard for it.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas Law. And the last question is a question of Flores Bella. Are the BRICS preparing for the impact of quantum computers on digital technology? Repeat. Are the BRICS preparing for the impact of quantum computers on digital technology?
I can speak on this. So India, for example, has created something called the National Quantum Mission. And the National Quantum Mission is a decadal project where the government is funding both research at the academia and public labs, as well as funding startups through a deep tech fund. And the focus is on three broad areas, quantum information, quantum sensors, and then quantum communication. And I think communication is perhaps further along because there are these risks with encryption systems being vulnerable. So how do you build post-quantum communication infrastructure which can ensure that encryption is not compromised? So I foresee that as a potential area where more work is likely to translate into something tangible. Quantum computing, of course, for it to be practical, usable, is perhaps some years away. But the second area, which is quantum sensors, again, I think is another area where perhaps we will see more progress in the near time. So all of these are efforts within the National Quantum Mission. And I'm sure there's, again, scope for collaboration and knowledge sharing there.
I think I can add to this one as well. This was actually one of the focuses of the Brazilian presidency in BRICS this year. And as of now, there are no formal or, unified BRICS actions explicitly addressing the influence of quantum computing, right? But the countries, I mean, individually, they did have developed their own strategies for this sector. And besides, in this year's Rio Declaration, the group also did appreciate the Brazilian proposal to consider and to enter into the discussion of quantum technologies for the next BRICS summit. So there is a prospect for discussion on this area, but it is still very embryonic within the BRICS working groups and forums and within the groups, within the BRICS in itself. And if that's okay, I want to tackle on the previous question as well. Just real quickly, I have a paper publication in process that is due to be published by this year by the scientific journal Conjuntura Internacional by PUC Minas that tackles specifically this area of BRICS digital infrastructures and some of the discussions that I brought here. And again, the BRICS Partnership for Industrial Revolution that I have presented in my presentation, still for me, it is perhaps the best cooperation mechanism that has been developed with the group thus far. And for everybody listening to us here, Professor Thomas, Sashi, and Victor, I do recommend looking into the Xiamen Innovation Center, also known as the BRICS Partner Innovation Center. It is the center responsible for nearly $5 billion worth of cooperation projects up until this year. And that's more than the new development bank lands in a year, for example, right? And even though this is a much less well-known initiative, you're not going to see anything about this Xiamen Innovation Center in Folha de São Paulo or in any news outlets here in Brazil as it is showcased with the NDB in itself. And I mean, ultimately, the BRICS, they do work much like some of the most important Chinese international forums. I can sit here at the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, FOCAC. I can sit the China CELAC Forum as well. But that is not to say at the same time that it does not produce any broader cooperation initiatives. They are already underway, but surely it is a pretty big, long road ahead of our partners. I think that both the axes that Victor has mentioned in his presentation, as well as the ones on case key AI sovereignty enablers in my presentation, they do represent the framework necessary for the proper development of AI that even tackles into the regulatory aspects that Professor Thomas and Professor Sashi have entered into their presentations as well. But I cannot stress enough, and I do have to mention this, even though it wasn't on the presentation, and even though it isn't a BRICS cooperation initiative, but it does most definitely impact our partners, which is under the Belt and Road Initiative, China has created the Digital Silk Road, right? Which is an initiative to develop information and communication technologies, especially in the Global South, not exclusively, but especially in the Global South. And I have studied China's relationship, for example, with Ethiopia, which is a new BRICS member, and they have developed basically the entire country's internet backbone and overall infrastructure, specifically with ZTE and Huawei. I also have a publication on this case specifically with Professor Renan Hollander from the Federal University of Pernambuco. It was a book chapter on a real-fledged publication about the BRI. The title of the chapter is Digital Silk Road and Cyber Politics in Africa, the Ethiopian Case. And I think this is a discussion that intertwines BRICS because it is much more of a bilateral Chinese foreign policy initiative rather than a group initiative itself. But still, the scale and the development capacity ushered by China does bear our consideration into this discussion, since it regards basically our biggest partner in the group and perhaps the one with the biggest capacity for ICT development, and more importantly, from these ICT initiatives that I've mentioned, for example, the Xiamen Innovation Center, it is in China. And most of those initiatives, most of the AI cooperative mechanisms within BRICS, they are based on China, in China, and by Chinese companies. So we do have to take that into consideration and not thinking that the other partners have an equal saying or have an equal capacity of development as China. It is a different partner. It is a partner with a higher capacity, and this does have to be considered within our broader discussions.
Thank you, Dr. Chassi and Dr. Otávio Oliveira. Now, for the last, please, speakers, feel free to share your closing comments, closing remarks. Who started?
Thank you, Lucas. I just want to thank the University of São Paulo. I want to thank GBRICS also with a friend, Ana Beatriz, that invited me to be part of this panel. And I want to thank also Professor Sashi, Professor Otávio, Professor Victor. It was a very interesting panel with many perspectives. And of course, we see the world in a different perspective with many innovation, many technologies. So I just want to leave a reflection of how can we deal with this new world for our generation and for the next generations that will have to deal with the big challenges that will deal directly regarding the artificial intelligence. That's it. Thank you.
So,
Oh, maybe I can go next then. So I would like to say thank you for Lucas and Jessica and for BRICS for the invitation, and also Professor Shashi, Thomas and Octavio for the discussion. And I think we all see like the common grounds in the discussion, which are like the risks of AI and the need to take into account the diversity and how those countries are thinking about the infrastructure. I think in almost all the discussion we noticed this, and hopefully we will see a collaboration exit for this and collaboration efforts for this between those countries from BRICS Plus. And thank you again for the invitation.
thank you, Dr. Thomas and Dr. Victor. Next.
I would like to once again thank the BRICS Studies Group from the University of São Paulo for this opportunity, as well as our partners, Investina, our dear panelists, Professor Sashi, Thomas, and Victor, Lucas, our moderator, Jessica, and our technical team. It was for me a great opportunity to tackle on an issue that is going to affect our lives for the foreseeable future, and most importantly, are going to be mostly amongst the main concerns and challenges for the BRICS group, especially with the geopolitical struggles we are facing currently in the international stage, most of them ushered by the US. So, thank you.
Thank you, University of Sao Paulo and esteemed panelists and the organizers and the moderator. I think it was a very good learning opportunity for me to understand the perspective from China, from Brazil, and different parts of the world, the challenges. And I think the way forward is going to be more knowledge sharing, more best practices sharing, because technology is moving fast. What we are discussing today will be obsolete in a few weeks from now. So the only way for us to get ahead of this fast-moving technology era is to be able to build capacity and share best practices, put in frameworks that can stand the test of time. So look forward to more such exchanges. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy for this moment. So, with this last comment, we conclude our roundtable on technological evolutions in the BRICS Plus, from industry to artificial intelligence, in the name of Center for BRICS Studies, GBRICS, of the University of São Paulo. I would like to thank our guests, speakers for your time, and our audience for the interaction. For this live, don't forget to fill in the attendance form. Please, don't forget to fill in the attendance form for the certificate. In your YouTube chat, this table will be available on your YouTube channel at Ibrahim Oficial if anyone wants to take what in the future. So, thank you so much. Thank you all. It's a great pleasure to be here. It was great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.